What's going on? My day-to-day people. Got my people with me, huh? Got my people with me. Another day to continue to bless the Lord. Consistency. Daily bread. Another day to serve the Lord, repent. All right. Another day to bless one another, continue to love one another. Another day to love through hate. It's easy to love your family members. It's harder to love somebody that's coming against you, but you're more rewarding, right? The most challenging things in life you're more rewarding for. If you want muscles, you got to put yourself in a regimen of doing workouts, right? To get that muscle. So you're not going to get muscle just sitting on the couch all day, right? So you have to go through these challenges. Same concept, right? Um, give us Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. That's what we're going to speak about. We're going to start in Leviticus chapter 16, okay? We'll start in Leviticus and then cross over to Mark. So to paraphrase it, you have Aaron, which was a priest, back to the animal sacrifices. You had to purge blood for the atonement of sins. So in this particular instance, we have two goats, right? These two goats, one took the sin offering, which is death. It's the blood for the atonement of the sins. And that correlates to Christ. That correlates to Christ. Now remember this key word. The key word is scapegoat. All right. So let's start in Leviticus chapter 16. We're going to start in let's see. Let's start 7. And he shall take the two goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make the atonement with him and to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. So you got two goats, one taken to death, and the other one's a scapegoat. All right? Think about Christ. Think about Barabbas. Tuck the sin. Blood came out of our Messiah. And then one was released. All praises for that. So let's see if we got anything else here. Let's look at 16, verse 16. And he shall make an atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions and all their sins. And so shall he do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. So we all come through dirty, right? We're dirty when we're blind. We're dirty when we're lost. We have filthy garments on. All right? And that like Zechariah chapter 3. We can go there. We all have these dirty garments. And Jesus is that soap that cleansed through that blood. He cleanses. Not only are you cleansed, you're also seeking this robe, this cloak of righteousness. You're looking for them holy clothes that don't have no holes in them. All praises for that. So when you're dirty and you're coming through in these dirty clothes, we're filthy. You're filthy until you accept Christ as your Messiah. Let's see what happens when this goat goes in the wilderness. Let's look at Psalms 103. Let's see. Psalms 103, verse 12. As far as the east from the west, so far hath he removed our transgressions from us. All praises for that. Let's go to Mark. Let's go to Mark. Let's look at Mark chapter 15. We're going to start in verse 7. And there was one named Barabbas, which lay bound with them that had made insurrection with him, who had committed murder in the insurrection. So insurrection is what basically Barabbas was charged with, like a rebel, like a tyrant that uproar or uprise against some type of government officials or whatever the case may be. So that's what you get when you come across the insurrection. 8. And the multitude crying aloud began to desire him to do as he had ever done unto them. But Pilate answered them, saying, will ye that I release into you the King of Jews? For he knew that the chief priests had delivered him for envy. So they turned over Christ based off jealousy. Okay? They turned over the Messiah because every time this man performed a miracle, you always had an agent or somebody present that was from the Pharisees. Okay, so the Pharisees come from the line of priests. They were basically priests that went rogue, if you will. So every time he performed these miracles, somebody was always there to accuse him. Hey, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. Hey, blah, 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 blah. Hey, you're a devil worshiper. How'd you do that? They always had some type of slick thing to say, right? And then the thing about Christ, he was even slicker with the remarks that he said. Like when you look at this stuff and his reply to these folks, you could tell it just went over their head. And I always say, man, I would have loved to see him and Peter walking down the road back in the day, because Peter was a hothead, and then you had Christ. Christ was just full of truth. Excuse me. 11. But the chief priests moved the people that he should rather release Barabbas unto them. And Pilate answered and said again unto them, what will ye then that I shall do unto him whom you call the King of Jews? What do I need to do with this man? 13. And they cried out again, crucify him. Then Pilate said unto them, why? What evil has he done? And they cried out the more exceedingly, crucify him. And so Pilate, willing to content the people, released Barabbas unto them and delivered Jesus when he had scourged him to be crucified. So look at that. One stayed for the sin. One stayed to be killed. One was released. You had a scapegoat. 16. And the soldiers led him away into the hall called Praetorium, and they called together the whole band. And they clothed him with purple and platted a crown of thorns and put it about his head, and began to salute him, hail, King of Jews, just a mockery. And they smote him on the head with a reed, and did spit upon him, and bowing their knees, worshipped him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple from him, and put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. So Christ was spotless. Whenever the Lord wanted these sacrifices that was in the Old Testament, he wanted them spotless. Like they almost had to be perfect. You couldn't have like 3 legs longer than one. It had to be perfect, the perfect sacrifice. He did not want a sacrifice that was not perfect. He wanted it spotless, and that's what Christ was. Christ was spotless. So these people peppered him up, beat him up. I use peppered him up as in beating him up, but put hands on him and spit him and did all of these things because he was spotless, and they wanted to put a spot on him. And that's where you get the difference between the wisdoms of the earth and the wisdoms of the Lord. That's where you get it. He's spotless, so they wanted to do all these things to try to put a spot on him. All right? That's what they wanted to do. So give us Barabbas. That still happens in today's time. So at that time, they wanted to release a murderer into them. We'd rather take him than take that guy. That's what they said. So we still do that today. We'd rather go out to the clubs. We'd rather do all these other crazy things instead of getting our head right, getting our heart right, and getting our family right, and just getting everything right in order to be a Christ-centered individual, to have a Christ-centered relationship, to have a Christ-centered anything that you have going on. It has to be Christ-centered. Okay? So you rather take Barabbas. Remember, challenges. All right? It's a challenge to follow Christ. It is, because everybody thinks it's all peaches and cream and stuff don't happen. Yeah, right. You have to be refined, right? That refining, through refining is where you become pure. You have to endure these trials. Like, once again, whenever you go through these trials, instead of asking what or why, ask what. What do I need to learn? So when you go through these trials, and it's so beautiful, because when we go to Genesis, we see that man came from the earth, right? So if you look at gold, look at any type of metal, these things come from the earth. So what happens when it comes from the earth? It has to be cleaned, okay? So if we're dirty and we come from the earth and we're dirty, we have to be clean, and we're clean through Christ. So just like that gold, it has to burn off these impurities that it have. When you got dirt, you got all types of stuff on there. So you got to burn it off, you got to clean it off, you got to do all of these things. And that's what the Most High do with each and every one of his children. They are going through the refining period to burn off the impurities so you can be considered pure, right? So if you went to a jeweler and you saw a gold necklace in there for like $100 and they had all types of rocks and crystals and all, everything else attached to it, would you give the $100 for that? Especially if it was just flakes of gold throughout all this dirt and stuff? No, that's not considered pure. So the same thing with us. When we go through these tests, when we go through these trials, when we're going through this fire, he's burning things off of us, things that we don't need, things that you may think you need, but you don't need. You know, it says, for the love of many is going to grow cold. And if we see that, if we have our eyes open, you can see that now. For the love of many is going to grow cold. You're going to have brothers turning against brothers, family members turning against family members. You're going to have that, right? Especially if you're in a home and then you have one person that's serving the Lord and the other people don't. They're always going to come against that. Okay? So if for the love of many is going to grow cold, we have to remember, when Noah was on the ark, not that many people was on the ark with him. The rest of the place got flooded. Continue to be that difference maker. Who cares what anybody thinks about you? Who cares if you lose friends? Who cares? Because at the end of the day, the only friend that you need are those that's in this body of Christ, right? The only family you need is the Father. And the Father is just so beautiful. It's beautiful what he does, because he takes each individual, raises them up. If they stay aligned, collectively, you're considered as one. No matter what background you came from. That's what's so beautiful about that. And just reading this Mark passage, man, and seeing what Christ had to go through, that's alarming. For one man to do that. And then, of course, what did he say? Forgive them, Father, for they did not know what they're doing. He died for Barabbas. He died for us. He died for people at their present time. He died for people that hasn't even came into this world yet. Much love. Peace.